I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh, yes, I will.
Let's pray. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you just for a great day already, just worshiping you, coming to know you more, God. I pray whatever things we're carrying this morning, whatever burdens, whatever struggles, whatever things are weighing on us, God, that we just lay them down before you and hear from you. That I would step out of the way, God, and that you would speak. In your name, amen. So let me start by asking, who here has traveled far outside the United States before? Anybody traveled far outside the United States? All right. What's the farthest someone has traveled? So shout out a place. Japan, that's pretty far. Greece, Italy. Okay, you guys have traveled far. Okay, never mind. And I haven't traveled as far. No, I've traveled places, actually. My wife's from England, so I've gone to England many times. We just went there in May to see family again. So we travel overseas. I love traveling to different countries. I love seeing the places, and one of the things I love is I love the food. I mean, you go there to have the food. Let's be honest, you got to eat all the food. And so when you go to these places, you kind of want to know what's going on in those places. You want to know what the place is like. You want to know what the people are like. You want to know what the food is like. Especially if you travel to a place you've never been, and if you travel by yourself. All right? So if you travel by yourself to a place you've never been and you don't know anybody, you really want to know some more about that place. One time I went to Haiti. I didn't know anybody in Haiti, but I went to Haiti. It was a great experience. I absolutely loved it. But I wanted to know more about why. First off, I want to know, where is Haiti? I didn't know. I'm like, Haiti, where is it? How far? Can I drive there? It's like, you can't drive there. So I found that out. I had to get on a plane. So when we travel places, we want to know about our destination. Not very many people, I mean, maybe you're that person, that will just kind of go without knowing anything, all right, and show up like, what country? Oh, cool. And so there's this great theologian whose name is R.C. Riles. He stated this, and I'm going to show you where I'm going with this. He stated, the man who's about to sail for Australia or New Zealand as a settler is naturally anxious to know something about his future home. Its climate, its employment, its inhabitants, its ways, its customs. All these are subject of deep interest to him. He's leaving his land of nativity and going to spend the rest of his life in a new hemisphere. It would be strange indeed if he didn't desire information about where he's going. So he's saying if people would settle in another country, they want to know, all right, because they're going to leave everything, especially when he's talking about people leave everything and go there. They're not going to go back home. And then he transitions here, which is what I want to tie into us. He transitions to talking about Christians, those who follow Jesus. He says, now surely, if we hope to dwell forever in that country, even a heavenly one, we ought to seek all the knowledge we can to get about it. Before we go to our eternal home, we should try to become acquainted with it. So he's saying, just as people are just as anxious to know about where they're traveling, how much more should we as Christians desire to understand our eternal home? Desire to understand what we can about our eternal home. The reason why I'm noting this is something God's been working in my life is that we as Christians, we don't speak about heaven that often. We really don't. And when we do, we don't really know what to say. We say phrases like, at least it's not hell, or something like that. And so we say phrases that don't make a lot of sense, and we don't know what to do with it, and we kind of just move on. But we should desire to understand with a passion and excitement of our eternal home. And one of the reasons I think we kind of get caught up in this stuff and we don't talk about it or we don't know what to say is because we often get caught up in the lies of the enemy. We have a really real enemy who wants us to believe lies. He doesn't care what lie you believe as long as you believe it. And he's going to lie about who God is. He's going to lie about who you are. He's going to lie about our eternal home. And if he could have you believe those things, then he could have you following a lie. And it's not just something in your mind. It's not just intellectual. It affects how we live. For example, if we believe a lie about God, he's telling you a lie. God is harsh, doesn't care, wants nothing really to do with you, or he's distant. If we believe that, then does that affect our lives in any way? Of course it does. It affects how we interact with one another. It affects how we engage in church community. It affects how we even engage our own personal walk with God. It affects everything. It's not just intellectual. It affects how we live. And the same is with heaven, our eternal home. If we believe lies about that, in the same way, it greatly affects how we live. So it's not just intellectual, but it actually affects how we live. Because it affects how, we're going to get into this in a second, it affects how we view and engage with suffering here now. It affects how we view and engage with evangelism. It affects how we view and engage with hope, with purpose, how we use our money, how we use our possessions. All these are affected by how we view heaven. But if we're honest, again, we rarely talk about it. And when we do, we many times don't know what to say. In John 14, Jesus says something many of us might be familiar with as a kid. You might have sang a song about it. It says this, "Do not let your heart be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you will also be where I am." Amen. He's stating that heaven is a very real place. It's not some imaginary place. It's a very real place that he's coming back to get us for. It's a very real place to those who trusted and follow Jesus. Now, my goal is simple this morning. My heart is to show two things. I have two goals, all right? It's to really show what misconceptions or lies we often have believed about heaven and how that affects our lives. And the second is to really correct that and show how should we begin to view heaven and to understand that our eternal home is far greater than anything we could have or experience here. In his book, Heaven, Randy Alcorn, he was talking to different pastors, getting people's perspective, talking to them about heaven. Hey, what's your view on heaven? How do you view heaven? Asking questions like that. And understand, he's talking to people that would profess to follow Jesus, all right? There are people that say, Jesus died for my sins, I trust in him. Might say everything that this church holds to. But I want to read some statements that they also believe, which I find interesting. These are pastors. So as Randy Alcorn asked this guy what he thought about heaven, this is something a certain pastor said. "Whenever I think of heaven, it makes me depressed. I would cease to exist when I die. I'd rather cease to exist when I die. To float around on a cloud with nothing to do but strum a harp is also terribly boring. Heaven doesn't sound much better than hell. I'd rather be annihilated than spend eternity in a place like that." That's not making a statement from someone who's not a believer. That's coming from a pastor. Again, don't ask me the person's address. I don't know who said that. He didn't put it. All right? But the point is, well, I'm like reading this quote. I'm like, that definitely affects him. That definitely affects his congregation. That affects how he views his life, his purpose, how he engages with people, how he engages with suffering, how he even engages in evangelism with other people. If he views it as terrible, not much better than hell, he'd rather be annihilated. That's some pretty strong statements. And he's not alone. Many other people have said similar stuff. Another pastor stated this. When it comes to that, talking about heaven, I suppose I'll enter into eternal bliss. This whole idea of just kind of floating nothingness but peace kind of way. But I really wish you wouldn't bring up such a depressing subject. Depressing. It kind of hit me there. Both of them talk about being depressing. And I'm like, how can our future hope and glory be a depressing subject? How can that be a depressing subject? And then I stopped and thought, I'm like, how do Christians actually view heaven? These aren't people that are out in the outskirts. They've been to church maybe one time and never came again. These are people within the church. So I think it's not as uncommon as we think to have Christians having views like this or the likes. To think heaven is not something I really want to go to. At least it's not hell. Kind of a get out of hell free card. You go to heaven, that's okay. You're floating on a cloud. We have different ideas that definitely affect us. And we're going to look at a couple of those, and I'll mention some that I believed when I was a kid. But again, why do Christians, how do we come about with these ideas? And one I already mentioned is because we have followed and listened to lies of Satan. Satan wants us to believe lies because he knows that that will greatly affect us and make us ineffective. Because if you're a follower of Christ, he's like, well, how can I make him ineffective? Well, let's throw in some lies about God. Let's throw in some lies about himself. Let's throw in some lies about heaven. Because if they can follow those lies, well, that's going to make them pretty ineffective in sharing about Jesus and following Jesus. And then Satan's like, my job's done. So how do we fight against it? We got to know what God says. We got to know what Scripture says. What does it say about our eternal home? What does it say about the hope of our glory that yet is to come? So one reason we follow and believe these things sometimes, or have this mixed bag of truth and not truth, is because we believe the lies of Satan. Another reason is throughout church history. I'm not going to go through a church history lesson, so don't worry. Throughout church history, we haven't had the strongest emphasis on heaven, even from great theologians. And great theologians that might impact you. They've written many things to help us understand the ancient texts, Hebrew, Greek, this book, this person, the nature of God being Trinity. They help us understand these things. But when you look at other stuff they write very, very little on heaven. One example is John Calvin. Wrote a lot about God's salvation. If you're familiar with him, you know he's written a lot, wrote a lot, wrote very little on heaven. Another theologian who wrote a book called The Nature and Destiny of Man, which I think would be a good point to talk about heaven, says nothing about heaven in that book. Another theologian named William Shedd, who is someone that, if you ever go to seminary, you'll probably read his thick theology books, like too thick, ones he uses as a doorstop kind of theology books. And I remember reading one of these, and I was struck with this before. I was struck with the same notion. The fact that when he was writing about eternity, he wrote like 87 pages on hell or eternal punishment, while he wrote 2 pages on heaven. I mean, when I was reading, I was kind of struck, like, well, that seems a little lopsided. Nothing else to say. Martin Lloyd-Jones, who was a great theologian of our time, his 900-page theology book only devoted about less than 2 pages on heaven. And this is not me throwing these people on the bus. These are great theologians who have impacted me in many ways. But I'm saying we'd be willfully ignorant to think that doesn't affect us. That we'd be willfully ignorant to think their writings on something else affects us in a good way, while their lack of writing on something else doesn't affect us at all. So I just want to show briefly 5 lies about heaven that I'm not saying you hold to all of them, but many times it can impact us in some sort of way. And we didn't realize. And these come about because either, we believe the lies of Satan, or we believe what cultures kind of try to tell us, or we believed, or we just don't have a good standing, understanding what Scripture says. And we come about to form these not right views of heaven. First view is that heaven is lonely. That heaven is lonely. And this idea that you won't recognize anybody at all. And in a book entitled Heaven, a History, the author stated this: not only do sorrow, illness, death, and labor cease, but friends, family, changing, human creativity are utterly unimportant. The whole idea is that almost kind of like Men in Black, you get your mind wiped, and like you don't really remember anything, and you don't recognize people. If that's our view of heaven, that's kind of, that brings a lot of anxiety when you think about it. You're like, well, we get anxious about going somewhere you don't know anybody, all right? We get anxious about going to a family reunion where you do know people. It's like, I know these people, and I don't want to go there. We get anxious about these things. And so the idea, if we believe heaven is a place that we're going to be kind of like alone in a crowd, we don't even recognize our loved ones, that's going to bring a lot of anxiety and affect how we live. So then, how do we respond to that? With Scripture. Well, I'll point out a couple things simply for us to know that that's not how heaven is. One example. Throughout the Old Testament, whenever an Old Testament saint died, Abraham, Moses, there's always a certain phrase that's put after they die. So they're gathered together with his people. There's this emphasis of a family reunion after death. To gather together with his people, there needs to be some sort of recognition. Otherwise, Moses is kind of like, wait, who, I don't know any of these people. So it's this sense of family reunion, coming together, recognizing, knowing each other. Another pretty big example is Revelation chapter 6. In this passage, you have these martyrs. There are someone that are martyred here on earth. And it's Revelation 6, chapter verses 9 through 11. And you have these martyrs before the throne of God. And this is what they state. They say, "How long, Lord, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" Why is that an important statement? They know who they are. They remember. They remember what happened. And they're asking God, hey, when are you going to do something about it? The importance of that is that they continued. They didn't change who they were. They're still the same person. They're redeemed and saved, but the same person. And the whole notion of the gospel, the redemption of the gospel, is we're saved by grace. And heaven is going to be a celebration, remembering what God has done for us and to us, that we're celebrating together, surrounded by other broken, saved people. Which makes most sense when you remember that you're a broken, saved person. And the whole notion that heaven will be lonely, not according to anything in Scripture, but rather a celebration, a banquet, a feast, a family reunion. We got to understand that. That's huge. The second lie that we've believed about heaven, or many times of us have, is that heaven is dreary. Mark Twain, if many of us read Mark Twain, had a lot of things to say about heaven and God. Let's just say he wasn't a fan. He was famously known for stating, "Choose heaven for the climate, but hell for the company." Choose heaven for the climate, but hell for the company. And many times we mix up that phrase in different ways. And that's not uncommon to be stated. It's like, oh, heaven's going to be full of like nerds and judgmental people and boring people. But heaven is where the party's at. I mean, hell's where the party's at is what they'll say. Everyone's going to have fun there. There's going to be a party there. Well, we're not going to talk about hell today. That's not a party. But we've got to understand something about heaven. I'm going to mention a few people that will be there. And understand this is not us sitting like this all day, judging people. Moses split the Red Sea. I'd like to chat with that guy. Say, hey, like how high was it? Like, did you see the fish? I mean, I've seen a lot of movies, but was it like that? David. A lot of questions for David. But I want to know how tall was Goliath actually? I want to know. These are people that are going to be there. Repentant sinners. Hell's going to be full of unrepentant sinners. Place I do not want to be. Heaven is going to be full of repentant sinners. People from warriors to kings to CEOs to accountants. It's just going to be a mix of everybody from every country. Man, that's going to be awesome. The thing is, when I was a kid, I had slightly like this kind of view, partially. And I think God was speaking to me one time because I had a dream. And in this dream, we're not going to go crazy in the dream. In this dream, I died. Don't ask how I died. In my dream, well, I'll tell you. In my dream, my friend killed me. I don't know why. And I looked at him differently the next day. I was like, you got something against me? What's up? And so I died, and then when I died, I went to heaven. In my dream, I knew I was in heaven, but heaven was this house on a hill. And it was just like dim lights. Everyone was sitting there quiet. No one was talking. And I was walking like, what's happening? Why is it so weird? And so in that, God, I think what God was doing was speaking to me. He's showing me a little bit about an incorrect view I had of heaven through a dream. It's like, this is how you view heaven, which is completely wrong. And I woke up like, wow, that's true. That's really a sad way to view it. Heaven is not going to be dreary in any way. It's going to be a celebration with all sorts of crazy people who have been saved by Jesus. The third thing I want to point out, and this is a common one that's kind of depicted in movies, is that heaven is, let's put it, colorless. So everything is just kind of white. You know, white clouds, white room, white robes, white. There's no color. Just everything white. And so, sense of colorless has a sense of light. It's lifeless. And that's a common depiction when they put any kind of thing in the movies. They always put it like that. But that couldn't be more of the opposite. First, you got to realize who God is. God created all the colors that we see. All the colors we see today, God created. Because He can. Because He likes to. And we have this idea that heaven is going to be less. That's so far from true. It's going to be even greater. Because even God allows some people to have snapshots, in a way, of heaven. Snapshots. And their description is them just kind of shocked and not really knowing what to say. They're like, so they're kind of shocked not knowing what to say. And the words they describe, they use words of like jasper, carnelian, rainbow, emerald, streets of gold. In case you're wondering, those are lots of colors. So their description is like, it's a place full of colors, even colors I do not know. A place that's full of life. And that's how they saw it. The fourth I want to point out is heaven is less. And this and the next one I want to point out, the last two, is that these, I think, are some of the most common within Christians, is that heaven is less. What I mean by that is that we got to get the full amount of joy that we can here and now, because we're not going to experience as much as that when we die. And so we got to get all the joy, all the pleasure, all the goodness. We got to get all the experiences we can, because when we die, our experiences are done, and then we're going to be in heaven. And as that pastor noted, we'll be floating on a cloud, praying a harp, which isn't true. But we forget this, that God is the God of pleasure. God created pleasure. Didn't have to, but He did. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. God's the author of goodness. The reason we experience goodness and pleasure and joy is because of God. Because God is the author of it. And the beauty about heaven is that right here, we can experience joy and goodness, but joy and goodness we experience now are always stained in some sort of way. It's stained by sin and corruption in some sort of way. Yet in heaven, we have the unstained, uncorrupted version of pure joy, pure pleasure, pure goodness, uncorrupted by sin. We can't fully grasp that because everything we see around us and experience is corrupted in some way by sin. But heaven won't be. And that's the beauty. The final thing I want to point out was the view of heaven. And this, I think, this was the view I would have the most as a kid. And the view is that heaven is an eternal long church service. So it's one church service, sitting in pews all the way back, playing one song on repeat forever. Maybe Joe's playing the song. I don't know. I'll repeat the whole time. And I remember as a kid, that's what I thought. It's not like someone sat and taught me that. So no one sat down and taught me that, but that was what was kind of embedded in what we thought. And I remember sitting there one day, or standing actually, in church one day as a kid, and I was kind of like, oh man, we're going to be doing this the whole time? I'm like, oh no. Is there any other, can we have any input? Change. And we'll talk about how that really affects how we live. But where do we get this idea? We get this idea because we read through Scripture, we're praising God. We'll be before the throne room of God. And Revelation talks about the living creatures are circling a throne of God and singing, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. And they're doing it forever. But also something to note about those same living creatures is in Revelation, they also sing a different song. So that's good, at least 2 songs. Yeah. But they also speak later where they're not singing. They also, one of them at least is in charge of pouring out the wrath of God with the bowls in Revelation 16. I'm noting this because they are doing other things as well. Worship will be the posture of us in heaven, knowing that there's God. And we're going to be, worship is not just singing. It's what we do. It's how we live. And so heaven will be, yes, we could sing, but it's going to be so much more than that. Worshiping God with what we do, how He's created us, creativity, what we can make. And so how do these, if we have any of these views or some sort of version of these views, how do these and how have they affected our lives? Well, one is it greatly affects how we engage in evangelism. If you view heaven as an eternal long church service, and it's hard for you to invite your friend now to church, do you think you're going to invite him to, I know you don't want to go to church that's like an hour and a half, but hey, you could join me for eternity doing the same thing. We're not going to talk to anybody about it. We're not. Because we ourselves like, well, it doesn't sound that good to go to, but I better tell people about it. So it greatly affects how we engage in evangelism and talk to people about Jesus. Also affects how we view hope when we're going through hard times. If we view this place here and now as the best it's going to get, man, we're going to lose hope. And we're going to lose it real quick. Because I don't even know, there's some weird stuff going on all the time. It affects greatly how we engage with our own personal suffering. In a book, which I love this book, it's called Why Does God Allow Evil? Very light topic, by a person named Clay Jones. His whole premise of this whole book is that we do not understand our suffering that we go through because we do not understand heaven. It's the whole premise of his book. Because he's like, when you understand your eternal home, your destination, everything else pales in comparison to that. And that's why we have Christians all around the world that are willing to suffer and die for Jesus, be martyred for Jesus, because they knew, okay, you're going to send me to heaven quicker. They know that place is a lot better than this place. Romans 8:18 states, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed to us. So what are some things? I know some things that heaven is not like. I kind of point out some things that heaven is like. But I just want to challenge us in a couple last things. What is heaven like? And the first thing I want us to understand, and I've already mentioned it, but I really want to emphasize this, is that this, where we are, this is not our final home. So whatever you're going through, This is not final. And I think it's easy to forget that. It's very easy to forget that. I love this quote by C.S. Lewis. You guys familiar with C.S. Lewis? Oh, great man. He stated this: I must keep alive in myself the desire of my true country. He's talking about heaven, which I shall not find till after death. I must never let it get snowed under or turn aside. I must make it the main object of life to press on to the other country and to help others do the same. He understood this right now. This is not my home. This is not my final destination. He said, as I'm here now, I want to get as many people as I can to know who Jesus is. But also understand this is not the final stop. Another old church father, he stated, we regard paradise, as in heaven, as our native land. This is not the end of our story. This is not the end of our story. And the enemy wants you to believe when you're going through hard times, he wants you to forget that. He wants you to think this is the end of your story. This is it. But it's not in any way. It's only the launching point to our eternal home. So what are some things heaven's going to be like? And I want to just give us a snapshot real quick that this will encourage you, will challenge you, will motivate you in your day-to-day life. The first, as I mentioned, again, it goes that we have joy and pleasures unstained by sin. The sorrow will be gone. In Revelation, it talks about he will wipe away every tear from their eye. There will be no death, no mourning, no crying, no pain, for all things have passed away. Evil will be gone. Sin will be gone. The devil defeated. A perfect, unstained community. Feasting, celebrating. Colors we've never seen. Saints of old. Saints of new. And one person I'm excited to come across is a man by the name of Jim Elliot. Anybody familiar with Jim Elliot? Jim Elliot's one of the people who have really had an impact in my life. How he lived his life. So let me just pause for a moment and let that sink in, that snapshot of heaven. That is our eternal home. That is our destination for those who trust in Jesus. And we're not going to be sitting, as this pastor said, sitting on a cloud playing a harp. Because first off, I don't even know how to play a harp. I don't know what are we doing. We'll be all out of tune. I don't know what's going on. Those things are complicated. We're not going to be sitting on a cloud playing a harp. Scripture talks about how we're going to reign with Christ. All throughout talks about it. Revelation, the book of Daniel, the book of 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy 2 states this, the saying is trustworthy. For if we have died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. I'm not saying I fully understand what that means, but there's this notion in Scripture that we're going to be reigning with Jesus for eternity. We're going to be celebrating. Big things are to come. Our eternal home is way more exciting than we realize. So heaven is a very real place. In this place right now, this is not it. There will be no more suffering, no more pain, no more evil. We will reign with Christ with joy and goodness and pleasure that does not end. And when we have this view of heaven, it helps us in how we actually live our lives. Because when you engage with suffering, you understand that that's not the final thing. Your eternal home is yet to come. You have a desire to engage in evangelism, to talk to people about Jesus. Because not only do you love Jesus because he died for you, but you're actually excited to go be with Jesus. and it affects our purpose. Because we know that everything we do here and now, the things we have, things are temporary. Money's temporary. Possessions are temporary. And we want to use them for God's glory. Our future is far greater than our present. And our eternal home is far greater than our present place. I want to end again with C.S. Lewis' quote, because I love that quote. I must keep alive in myself the desire for my true country, which I shall not find till after death. I must never let it get snowed under or turned aside. I must make it the main object of life to press on to that other country and to help others do the same. So my heart for you guys this morning is that if you're someone who's been following Jesus for a long time, that we would be encouraged to understand, hey, that's my eternal home. That's where I'm headed. And let me get as many people there as I can. And if you're someone this morning that does not know Jesus, I want to encourage you with this. That we all messed up. We've all sinned. And Jesus is saying, I've died for your sins. You can be forgiven and brought into my family. And when you're brought into my family, your eternal home is secure. You can't get kicked out. God doesn't kick people out of his family. Let me pray. God, we just thank you for this morning, God. As we're challenged, as we're encouraged, as we're inspired, as we're excited to know that our eternal home is yet to come. That our eternal home is far greater than anything we experience here and now. And that we'd be on mission to share you with other people. Speak to us this morning, God. Let your Spirit fill us and guide us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Today's benediction is from 1 Peter chapter 2. Before I read that, I'd like to remind you that we're serving lunch today, and for those that have the gift of helps, we break down this side of the sanctuary and set up tables so everyone can enjoy fellowship and food together. Verse 9, it says, you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light. God bless you. Have a great day.